the World War II sand trick that made buildings bulletproof for almost nothing, and, honestly, modern builders buried it. There is a moment in every war when someone figures out that, the most expensive solution is not the best one. During the Second World War, soldiers on the front lines, outgunned, undersupplied, and running out of time, discovered that a material sitting right beneath their boots could stop a bullet, survive a blast, and keep a man warm enough to fight another day. That material was sand, and the wall they built with it became one of the most overlooked engineering breakthroughs in modern military history. Not because it failed, because it worked too well and cost almost nothing. Today, modern construction ignores it almost completely. Builders pour concrete, stack cinder block, frame with timber and, charge you accordingly. But the armies of the 1940s knew something your contractor does not. They knew that sand, properly packed and contained, could outperform solid walls in almost every category that matters when survival is on the line: stopping power, heat resistance, blast absorption, and cost. This is the story of the World War II sand wall. Where it came from, why it worked, how soldiers used it, and why you, right now, today, can use the exact same method to protect your home, cut your heat loss, and build something that a rifle round cannot punch through. For almost nothing. Most people think stopping a bullet requires something hard: steel plate, thick concrete, dense stone. That instinct makes sense. You want something that resists impact, but resistance is only part of the equation. What actually kills the bullet's energy is not hardness alone, it is disruption. When a bullet travels through the air, it is doing one thing: moving in a straight line with enormous kinetic energy, concentrated in a tiny point. The moment that point hits something hard and unyielding, like a concrete wall, two things happen. The wall takes the impact all at once, and if the bullet is moving fast enough it can punch clean through, or the wall shatters under the concentrated stress. Sand works differently. When a bullet enters a sand-filled barrier, it does not meet a single surface. It meets millions of individual particles, each one capable of moving, shifting, and redirecting the projectile's energy. The bullet begins to tumble. Its trajectory distorts. The energy that was concentrated in a neat, deadly point gets dispersed in every direction simultaneously. By the time the round has traveled through 12 to 18 inches of properly packed sand, it has lost the structural integrity to exit the other side. Military tests conducted during the war showed that a standard infantry rifle round, capable of punching through a standard wooden wall or a thin concrete block, could be stopped by as little as 12 inches of sand-filled barrier. Field engineers noted that the sandbag worked not because it was strong, but because it was yielding. It absorbed, it adapted, it gave just enough to take everything. That is the physics of it. And once you understand it, the genius of the sandbag fort and the sand wall becomes obvious. The sandbag is one of the oldest military fortification tools in recorded history, but it was during the Second World War that its use was refined into something approaching an art form. Every major military power, Allied and Axis alike, deployed sand-based barriers in nearly every theater of the war. In the Pacific, American forces landing on island chains used sandbag walls as their first line of protection within hours of hitting the beach. They could not wait for concrete. There was no concrete. But there was sand. Always sand, and canvas bags, and enough training to stack them correctly. The key was not just the sand itself, it was the method. A single sandbag laid flat has limited value, but stack them in an offset pattern, the same way a bricklayer staggers courses to eliminate vertical seams, and you create a structure that distributes load laterally. Each bag supports the ones beside it and above it. The wall becomes monolithic through geometry, not through any single bag's individual strength. A double-thickness sandbag wall, roughly 18 inches deep, could withstand small arms fire completely. A triple-thickness wall, around 27 inches deep, provided meaningful protection against artillery fragments and even near-miss blast waves. Protection from bullets and blasts was the intended purpose. What nobody fully anticipated was the thermal performance of the sand wall, and it turned out to be equally remarkable. Sand is a poor conductor of heat. Air trapped between sand particles acts as an insulating medium, slowing the transfer of thermal energy dramatically. A sand wall of sufficient thickness does not just keep bullets out, it keeps heat in during winter and keeps scorching temperatures out during summer. Soldiers stationed in the North African desert, where daytime temperatures exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, reported that sandbag shelters remained noticeably cooler than the surrounding air. In the European winter, the same structures retained warmth in ways that thin-walled timber structures simply could not. This was not an accident of construction, this was thermodynamics playing out in real time. The sand mass acted as a thermal battery, absorbing heat slowly during the day, releasing it slowly during the night. The temperature inside a well-built sand wall shelter fluctuated far less than the temperature outside. That stability is exactly what you want in an extreme environment. Your body does not have to work as hard to maintain core temperature. You burn fewer calories, you fight more effectively, you survive. Here is where the history gets genuinely surprising. Military engineers during the war ran direct comparisons between sand-based barriers and traditional solid construction. The results were consistent and clear. Brick walls failed against sustained rifle fire. Concrete walls resisted bullets better than brick, but they cracked and spalled under blast pressure, sending secondary projectiles behind the wall, sometimes more dangerous than the original round. Timber walls offered almost no meaningful ballistic protection against anything beyond pistol calibers. Sand walls held up under rifle fire, absorbed blast energy without shattering, provided superior thermal performance, could be built by untrained labor in hours rather than days, could be repaired in minutes by adding more bags, and could be deconstructed and relocated entirely if the tactical situation changed. Cost was the other factor that made commanders pay attention. A sandbag cost almost nothing. Sand was almost always available on or near any battlefield. The bags themselves, initially canvas, later burlap, later still synthetic materials, were cheap to produce, and light to ship. The labor required was unskilled. Any soldier with a shovel could contribute to building a fortified position. No specialized engineers required. No concrete mixers, no rebar, no curing time, no complex formwork. A reinforced concrete bunker required engineering expertise, expensive materials, significant time, and a stable supply chain. A sand wall required a shovel, some bags, and a few hours of determined work. After the war ended, the engineering knowledge that had protected millions of soldiers was quietly shelved. The construction industry returned to concrete and steel. There were exceptions. Earthbag construction, a direct descendant of the military sandbag wall, by a small number of architects and engineers from the 1970s onward. The technique involves filling long fabric tubes or individual bags with soil, sand, or gravel, stacking them in offset courses, and stabilizing the structure with barbed wire between layers. The results are buildings that are earthquake-resistant, hurricane-resistant, fire-resistant, bullet-resistant, and capable of being built by non-professionals with minimal tools. So, this isn't just ancient history. It's really applicable, practical knowledge that you can use today, whether you're reinforcing an existing structure, building a new one from scratch, or just, preparing a defensible position on your own property. For basic perimeter protection, standard polypropylene sandbags, the kind you'll find at any hardware store or agricultural supplier, filled with dry sand or even compacted local soil, and stacked in offset courses up to a height of 3 feet, can actually create a barrier that stops common rifle calibers entirely. A wall that's 2 bags deep, that's about 16 to 18 inches, gives you meaningful ballistic protection. And if you go 3 bags deep, you're looking at substantial protection. For semi-permanent reinforcement of an existing structure, a basement, a safe room, a shelter, interior sandbag walls built against existing walls add both ballistic protection and thermal mass. They do not require structural integration with the existing building. They simply sit there, doing their job. The mass of the sand stores heat during the day, releasing it slowly at night. In cold weather, this keeps interior temperatures more stable even without active heating. If you are going to do this, do it correctly. Fill your bags to about 75% capacity. An overfilled bag is rigid and does not conform properly to the bags around it, leaving gaps. Tamp each course down before adding the next. Use a piece of pipe, a wooden tamper, or even a flat piece of timber. Stagger your joints. Build your wall with a slight backward lean, roughly 2 to 4 inches per foot of height. This batter, as it is called, uses gravity to reinforce the structure. The Second World War forced millions of people to become improvised engineers. Necessity stripped away the assumption that good construction required expensive materials and credentialed professionals. In the peace that followed, that knowledge faded. Prosperity made it irrelevant for most people. But the physics did not change. Sand still absorbs bullets the same way it did in 1944. The thermal properties are identical. The people who understand these techniques before they need them are the people who will be building protection when others are still figuring out where to start. A wall that stops bullets, insulates your shelter, and costs almost nothing is not a fantasy. It is not a theoretical exercise. It is a documented historical reality. Sand is everywhere. Bags are cheap. The method is simple. The results are remarkable. Build the wall. Fill the bags. Stack them right. And remember that some of the best survival knowledge ever accumulated was written not in books, but in the ground, by men with shovels, under fire, with no other option.